Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Monday, October 28th, 2019. This is our GoldFish Report number 399, folks. Week 145 POTUS report with the most, obviously, the most dangerous mine in America, the Fets. How are you, Jim?
Well, Louisa just released the key documents in the Sandy Hook lawsuit with Leonard Posner, which the world will want to see. It includes a complaint, includes 4 different death certificates. It includes the document examiner's report where they concluded that not only was the death certificate I had published in the book of fabrication, but the 3 others that had surfaced during the course of the case were fabrications too. You'll have their report at hand, and my critique of their expert witness claiming that Leonard Posner was more traumatized by reading a few sentences in the book than he was by the death of his son at Sandy Hook. The situation is completely absurd. You'll have the basic documents at hand to understand the case. Go to jamesfetzer.org now.
Folks, the reason why you should care about this case is because it's all about the First Amendment, and if you can't express, especially as an expert, as a well-schooled, highly educated individual, expresses an opinion publicly, you can't. It's based on science. It's based on logic. It's based on analysis, and it's an opinion that's shared by many other people who co-contribute to the opinion. It seems like this is really a harbinger. This is a warning for everyone in America, Jim. So we'll talk about that shortly. We have a lot of news to cover, folks. Okay, so everybody knows about the big attack. The ISIS Baghdadi was taken out. He's the leader of ISIS over in Syria. The president did a news conference on Sunday morning, the 27th, October 27th, to address the nation and explain what happened. Basically, I'm going to talk about this a little bit right now and up front on the report. So there's very long. Well, here we go. United States has brought the leader of ISIS to justice.
This is show slides, Louisa.
No, not right now.
Oh.
I'm just going to explain to the viewers. Okay. I'm just reading from a press release from the White House. I can screen share that. If you prefer. This way you can also read along. Okay, so here President Trump announced a successful United States operation has finally brought to justice Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the founder and leader of ISIS. The United States has been searching for Baghdadi for years and has been a top national security priority for President Trump. Baghdadi and the cowards around him are responsible for horrific and depraved violence, including the deaths of Americans James Foley, Stephen Soltoff, Peter Kassig, and Kayla Mueller. The operation was named in honor of one of Baghdadi's American victims, Kayla Mueller. ISIS publicly beheaded more than 300 people under Baghdadi, committed genocidal killings of the Yazidi population, and killed thousands of captured prisoners of war. This operation is a win for the United States and the world, and a reminder that we will continue to pursue all ISIS terrorists to the end. This was a very successful operation. This daring operation was launched at President Trump's direction, successfully leading to the death of Baghdadi with no American forces lost. Although there was a K-9 that was injured, but they didn't say that it had been deceased, just that it was injured. They did not go through the front doors. The president announced in his news conference, they literally blew a hole in the side of the wall and, of course, collapsed the tunnels that were there as well, which was basically a dead end and didn't really lead to anywhere, according to the president. This daring nighttime raid was launched at the direction of President Trump, and is the result of a team effort by the military and partners from across the counterterrorism community. Throughout the operation, the president and members of his national security team monitored developments in the Situation Room. President Trump took steps to ensure that this operation would not be leaked and our troops put in danger. In order to protect the safety of our troops, other countries with forces in the region were notified that American forces would be moving through the area. The operation was a team effort by America's finest, successfully leading to the confirmed death of the leader of ISIS, the most ruthless and violent terror organization in the world. At 7:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on October 26, which was Saturday, the Special Operations Force commander on the ground reported that Baghdadi had been killed. A combination of visual evidence and DNA tests confirmed Baghdadi's identity. No American personnel were lost in the operation, while 5 other enemy combatants were killed in the compound, and additional enemies were killed in the vicinity. An American military working dog was wounded, and 2 United States military members were slightly wounded but have returned to duty. This is a big deal, folks. So you can go to the blog and take a look at the rest of this. This was a very big deal, and I think the president, what the president did was he put a coalition together. He had teams. He did not disclose what port he was using and that he was launching from, but they did fly low. They came in low in their operations. They had notified Russia because he said they had to fly through Russian airspace. Turkey knew about this, and Iraq was actually helpful as well. So this was amazing joint, multilateral cooperation that the president had to do this mission, although the president said that they were not informed exactly what the target was. Also, you'll notice that the speaker, Nancy Pelosi, had published, they were not happy that they were not notified. So this was something that had been reported in the news. They were definitely not happy. I'm going to screen share this press release that the speaker had. It's on a different, I have to go into a different screen. Hang on a second, folks, and I'll do that so you can take a look at this. This is a statement from Nancy Pelosi's office saying that Pelosi, Americans salute the heroism, dedication, and skill of our military and our intelligence professionals and acknowledge the work of our partners in the region. We are relieved that no U.S. personnel died in this daring raid. The death of al-Baghdadi is significant, but the death of this ISIS leader does not mean the death of ISIS. Scores of ISIS fighters remain under certain conditions in Syrian prisons, and countless others in the region and around the world remain intent in spreading their influence and committing acts of terror. So anyway, clearly she didn't get the intel, but that's okay. She's very disappointed that she wasn't notified. There was a tweet put out from her office yesterday, but interestingly, folks, there's been no sightings of Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff since their reported trip to Jordan. So I'm finding that very suspicious. Of course, Benjamin Fulford also noted the same, I would say, inconsistency or just observation. Also, we know that Representative Scalise did have a camera crew to go and essentially storm the private impeachment investigation that was going on in the Capitol, and he specifically said he wanted to go meet Schiff face to face. But there were no photos. He had press with him, and there were no photos of this. It was reported that Schiff had left, but there was no photos of him leaving. There were no statements in the public, nothing. So what does this mean, folks? I don't know. Have they been arrested? We'd have no idea. But it is interesting. And also, there's been no social media. We haven't seen John Brennan on social media for about 2 weeks now. So this is very interesting, what we're not seeing. Although there have been statements made, I think we should be watching this a little bit more closely. And also there's, okay, so that was a great accomplishment for the president this week. And there's a lot of other news, so let's keep going. There is progress on the U.S.-China trade deals. There was an announcement, which I'm going to screen share here, from the Epoch Times. Some people pronounce that differently, but that's how I pronounce it. And I'm going to explain what this is. There is progress with the China trade deal. Right here you have they're close to finalizing part of phase 1 of the trade deal. Here they said that they made The U.S. and Chinese officials are close to finalizing some parts of a trade agreement after high-level telephone discussions with talks to continue. The U.S. Trade Representative's Office and China's Commerce Ministry said on October 26th. They made headway on specific issues, and the two sides are close to finalizing some sections of the agreement. Discussions will go on continuously at the deputy level, and the principals will have another call in the near future. A statement was released, according to a statement. So Washington and Beijing are working to agree on the text for phase 1 of the trade agreement, and they are hoping to sign this next month when they are in Chile for a summit in Chile with Xi Jinping. So in specific, what kind of things, and I know it's really great to hear this, but I wanted to always know what the details of this trade deal are. Why shouldn't it be transparent, and why shouldn't the public know? Beijing confirmed that technical consultations on some part of a trade agreement were basically completed. Agriculture products are major areas of discussion, and China's Commerce Ministry on both sides confirmed the United States will import, are you ready for this, folks? Chinese-made cooked poultry and catfish products. Let's repeat that. Chinese-made cooked poultry and catfish products, while China will lift a ban on U.S. poultry. I just wanted to emphasize that, just so you're all aware, you've been notified that your poultry is going to be coming from China, and catfish is coming from China. So just know that. I don't know if it's going to be labeled. It certainly would be nice to know if it would be labeled. Also, Beijing wants the United States to cancel some existing U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. So according to Reuters, and in return for pledging a step up in its purchase of U.S. commodities like soybeans. So here's some details. This is great. The world's two largest economies are trying to calm a nearly 16-month trade war that is roiling financial markets, disrupting supply chains, and slowing global economic growth. So basically, I just wanted to update you. They also want to cancel these tariffs, and that's just part of the deal. And I stand by the president because he is the art of the deal maker. He knows about making these deals. So it's he has to put pressure on them. There's lots of things, and there's a lot we're not privy to. I really would like to see more transparency, though, to be honest. And I'm going to tell you why. Because right now, there's something I want to bring to your attention, and it's going to, be a little bit shocking. So let me pull this up, and let me get started with this, and then I'm going to let Jim go on with his reporting. Here we have a 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference. They rented the Salt Palace Convention Center in Salt Lake City, Utah, for this conference. Okay, it's on Civil Society Conference. This is what it's about. However, something disturbing has come about with this conference. There was a reporter who went to the palace there, the Salt Palace it's called, to report on what was going on. And this is what she was met with. And I really do hope you can hear this. I'm going to unplug my headset because typically it's not really good audio. So it's a little hard to hear. So the UN official is very difficult to hear her, but you can look at the text at the bottom of the screen, and it will tell you what she is saying. Okay.
Okay, you turn off the camera. Oh, turn off the camera? Do I not have a right to have the camera? I'm not giving you permission to take my face. Okay, are you a public servant? United Nations Security Officer. Okay. This is my city, and so I have a right to film. This is United Nations compound? A United Nations compound? Yes. This is a compound? Yeah. Since Sunday evening, we took over this compound. This is international territory. When you step outside, it's U.S. Here is international territory. This is UN.
The United Nations claims to be the champion of your human rights. Here, they are boasting about how they love the freedom of the press. But notice that in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, they claim the power to deny you any of your rights at their discretion if it doesn't fit their agenda. There were thousands of cameras filming the United Nations that day. Activists, journalists, and citizens But as soon as their security saw that one activist was speaking against the UN's agenda, she was targeted, just like the UN's Declaration on Human Rights says that they have a loophole for. Let's recap what you just saw. The UN set up a compound in the middle of Salt Lake City. The UN says they took over the building. The UN stated that the taxpayer-funded Salt Lake Palace was now international territory where U.S. rights don't apply. The UN stated that the United States was outside the doors of the Salt Palace, and the UN, who at best should have been a guest of Salt Lake, instead acted like an invader and denied a U.S. citizen their First Amendment rights. Should the United Nations be allowed to simply claim territory in the middle of the United States and deny any U.S. citizen any of their inalienable rights? The evidence is clear that the United Nations claims of defending human rights is a complete farce. They have demonstrated their intent to rule, along with their complete lack of respect for our own citizens, for all to see, right here on our own soil. That's not all, but this has all been brought to you by your fellow elected leaders and other prominent Utah officials. The Utah legislature actually paid for them to come here and defended this international compound with your tax dollars. The mayor of Salt Lake City welcomed them with open arms, and the executives of Utah Valley University invited them here shortly after they officially signed up to promote the UN's agenda through the university. Do you know that the United Nations is already writing and passing laws the state of Utah and Utah's cities are putting into law on behalf of the UN? If you're upset that the Utah legislature and the city of Salt Lake invited this organization to come and trample on your rights, please go right now to UnitedNationsUtah.com and sign the petition, and then share this video on all of your social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more.
Okay, so when I looked into this a little bit more, let me just plug in my headset again. Sorry about that, so you can hear me. I hope that the sound was okay for everybody.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine.
This is quite disturbing, and I'm going to screen share. I did a little bit of digging, and lo and behold, this is what I found. The church hosted the event for the United Nations Conference in Salt Lake City, which happened in August, by the way, folks. The leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are hosting events in Salt Lake City this week associated with the 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference. For the next several days, thousands of attendees are in Utah's capital, the first city in the United States to host the annual event outside of the United Nations UN headquarters in New York City. So this is all about the conference. And, you know, the points that are brought up, Jim, are good points. You have the UN. Now, we know the UN 2030 agenda, right, folks? How can they just come in and claim sovereignty over a public facility that's being, as they said, it was a taxpayer-funded facility? The UN claimed that it was their compound and it was international territory. Now, did that woman misspeak? Did she make a mistake? I don't think so. She says she's a security officer for the United Nations. Why is this a problem? It's a big problem. If they're interfering and influencing the city of Salt Lake to pass laws, which they're doing. This is the church. This is the SDL church, right? And we know also that Mitt Romney is associated with this church. We also know that it's going to come out. It's going to come out about the child trafficking, with the church, and a few other things that are associated with the church there. There have been reports that there's going to be breakups of, territories within the United States, that we're not going to be all United States. And I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. The American people would never let that happen. Well, you know what? When you're not American anymore and you let too many illegals in, then you don't have Americans doing this anymore. This is why we're at a point in time where the sovereignty and our country is absolutely at great risk. I retweeted this and tagged the president on this, asking, what is this about? It's one thing to have the UN in New York City. It's another thing to for the UN to just take a public venue that's funded by the taxpayers and cut your rights off to that facility. And there's nothing stopping them from doing that in any city, in any town in the US. And I think we need to pay very close attention to this and stay on top of this subject, because that's a violation of our sovereignty, Jim.
Yeah, of course, Louisa, you're right, spot on it.
So I want people to take a good look at this. I also wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the longest serving Black congressman has died. John Conyers died at age 90. They are all dropping, let me tell you, Jim. And, Q warned this was going to happen. There were going to be people jumping ship. It's like not a coincidence. They're all kind of going in clumps and disappearing, not being seen in public anymore. And now we have Representative Katie Hill resigning from Congress because of some inappropriate relationships she's having with staffers. Folks, people are jumping ship, and this is really what Q had predicted long ago. In terms of the UN, this is a very serious concern, and I think people need to pay close attention to this, because this is a violation of our sovereignty to just arbitrarily take a facility, any facility within the United States. What's going on in Utah, folks? Let us know. By all means, put comments in the comment section if you have information and knowledge about what's happening in Utah, how the Utah Council has approved such things, and what the relationships are between the people on the council and the UN, and an overall agenda that may not be good for Utah. And if it happens in Utah, folks, and they violate our sovereignty, I would think the president would want to have something to say about this. So I ask the president right now, what do you have to say about this? Because this violates our sovereignty, and allowing this to happen is a very big concern, because what will they do next is really the question. So that's what I have to report on today. There's a lot of other things to report on, but those are by far the most important. Jim, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to screen share Jim's slides for him, since we have. Just double check and make sure this is the right one. Yes, it's the right one. Okay. So bear with me for just a moment while I screen share Jim's slides. Okay, and we'll do slideshow.
Yeah, if you can go to slideshow, Louisa, it should be able to.
Play from start. Okay, no. Here you go.
No. Yeah, very good, very good, very good. For all the talk about impeachment, the GOP is bringing in record-breaking money. Another huge difference, $27.3 million worth of difference for the Republican National Committee in September alone. Nice stash of cash. Next. Yep. Republican committee raised a record-setting $27.3 million in September, had $59.2 million cash on hand last month amid the impeachment push against President Trump, which has fueled GOP campaign contributions heading into the 2020 election. The Democrats are lagging far, far behind. As of last month, they were actually $7.3 million in debt. It's pretty fascinating. While Democrats focus on fighting President Trump, Republicans have prioritized voters, and we have another record-breaking fundraising month, the highest ever off-cycle to show for it. We have a fascinating report that the role of the parties in relation to the public has changed. The Democrats are now the party of the super rich, the Republicans, the party of the workers. This is fascinating. If you go to the next slide, you'll see how much evidence there is to substantiate it. The Wall Street Journal used the following indicators as measurements of socioeconomic class: real GDP, the value of goods and services produced in a congressional district, median household income of a congressional district, type of employment, education. By these measures, it's clear that in just 10 years, from 2008 to 2018, Democrats have become not just the rich, but the super rich, whereas Republican voters are overwhelmingly middle class and the working poor. Louisa, this is completely fascinating. Yeah. And if you go to the next, you'll see further documentary substantiation. It's really fascinating. The Democrats in 2008 were already trending to be a party of the rich, but now the transformation is complete. Democrats now largely represent voters who live in districts with the highest GDP. The median household income of Democratic congressional districts is about $52,000, but it has jumped 17% to about $62,000, while Republicans have barely changed. Types of employment: Democrats represent districts with the biggest clusters of high-paying professional jobs. Between 2006 and 2017, Democrats increased their share of adults with college degrees from about 27% to 34.5%. The next bar graph will show you median income, how it's jumped. The Democrats have gone up. It's really, truly fascinating, Louisa. I would never have thought this would happen. Next slide, further data. We see the Republicans are the party of the middle class and the working poor. Absolutely fascinating.
Amazing.
The vast majority.
Oh, you want me to go back?
Yeah.
Go back? Sorry. Okay.
The vast majority of GOP congressional districts had the lower GDP of 22 to 40 billion. After 10 years, Republican median household income had barely changed, barely increased to about 53,000. Types of employment: Republicans decreased their already minority shares of high-paying jobs in finance and insurance, and of jobs in digital and professional industries, while the GOP became the party of honest workers and lower-paying jobs. It's just fascinating, Louisa. Next slide, yes. So we find a new Fox News poll showing 51% of the public supporting impeachment over the Ukraine issue, whereas we previously reported he was completely in the clear, acting in accordance with a treaty with Ukraine to investigate criminal actions, which, if true, would display stunning ignorance of the facts, as I just recited them, was based on oversampling of Democrats by up to 14%, such as the poll showing Hillary winning in 2016. Louisa, they oversampled Democrats, they oversampled women, and they oversampled self-declared progressives in 2016 to assure us that Hillary Clinton was a sure thing, that Trump voters might as well not even turn out to vote. Your thoughts on all of the above?
Well, you know that quote, about statistics, Jim, right?
Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Exactly, my friend.
Meanwhile, this is absolutely stunning. Bitter, twice failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has accused Tulsi Gabbard of being a Russian asset. Louisa, this is lunatic. Flip to the next slide and we'll see.
You got to look at the picture of Hillary, though, they put in this. I saw this on social media, and then the next picture really make her look nuts.
Hillary's attacks on Tulsi sow more Democratic division than Moscow could ever dream of. In her zeal to beat off challengers to her party's hardline anti-Russian orthodoxy, Hillary Clinton has only succeeded in sowing discord between the crop of presidential Democratic contenders on the how very Putin-esque of her. Unfounded blaming of Russia for her own woes is nothing new from Hillary, who still blames the Kremlin for denying her the presidency 3 years ago. If it wasn't Russian hackers leaking her emails, it was Russian bots backing Bernie Sanders, or Vladimir Putin convincing the Green Party's Jill Stein to mount a third-party challenge. None of them were founded in reality, but Russian bashing has become her stock in trade. Even Matt Taibbi, who's relatively left-right for Rolling Stone, has been astounded. Matt Taibbi trounces the intellectual mainstream. Everyone's a Russian asset. America laughed at Hillary Clinton's remarks about Tulsi Gabbard, but her ideas fit perfectly into the intellectual mainstream. Hillary Clinton had some choice words. I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic Party and are grooming her to be the third party candidate, she said in a podcast with former Barack Obama aide David Plouffe. She's the favorite of the Russians.
Jeez.
Clinton appeared to be talking about Hawaiian Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who's a combat veteran. She's a major in the medical corps. She served 2 tours in Iraq, but she wasn't done and turned toward Green Party candidate Jill Stein. Jill Stein's also a Russian asset. Yeah, she's a Russian asset. I mean, totally. They know they can't win without a third-party candidate. She went on to talk about Trump. I don't know what Putin has on him, whether it's both personal and financial. I assume it is. This is now Matt Taibbi. Hillary Clinton is nuts. She's also not far from the Democratic Party mainstream, which has been pushing the same line for years. Less than a week before Hillary's outburst, the New York Times, once a symbol of stodgy, hyper-cautious reporting, ran a feature called Exactly What is Tulsi Gabbard Up To?, speculating of suspicious activity surrounding her campaign, using quotes from the neoconservative think tank, the Alliance for Securing Democracy, to speculate about Tulsi's Russian support. The second time the Times had written such an article. Louisa, it's completely absurd. Flip to the next and we get more. Hillary 2020, the Democratic Party on suicide watch.
Yeah.
This was published in Zero Head. You'd think Hillary Clinton might come with a better zinger than Russian asset when she flew out of her volcano on leathery wings Friday and tried to blunt speak through Tulsi Gabbard's heart. Much speculation has been brewing in the Webiverse that the flying reptile of Chappaqua might seek an opening to join the Democratic Party 2020 free-for-all. Wasn't Russian asset the big MacGuffin in the Mueller report, the tantalizing and elusive triggering device that added up to nothing? And aren't most people over 12 years old onto that con by now? Look at that photo, Louisa. Look at that one. It's not like Tulsi was leading the pack with two cable news networks and the nation's lead newspapers ignoring her existence. She must be wearing her Kevlar flak vest because she easily fended off the aerial attack and fired back at the squawking beast with a blast of napalm. Great. Thank you, at Hillary Clinton. You, the queen of warmongers, embodiment of corruption, personification of the rot that has sickened the Democratic Party. For so long, it finally come out from behind the curtain. From the day I announced my candidacy, there has been a concerted campaign to destroy my reputation. We wondered who was behind it and why. Now we know. It was always you, through your proxies. Ouch. The skirmish raised a question, though. Is the Democratic Party so sick and rotten it would resort to entertain Hillary as a 2020 nominee? For sure, I'd say. The party has been on suicide watch since the Mueller report blew up in her face. Next, Louisa, this is stunning stuff. And here, this is being run by the Democrats. I've got this in my email. They want to know if I think Hillary should run for president 2020. I mean, by all means, have her run. That would guarantee, absolutely guarantee, Donald Trump would win by an overwhelming landslide, Louisa.
Oh, yeah,
your thoughts and comments.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, what Trump wants is a very weak candidate, someone who has been, obviously, look, he said lock her up, during the campaign. But let me also just say that after the debates, Tulsi Gabbard had, 40% support? And as she noted, the press completely ignored it and instead wanted to prop up one of the other people as front runners. They had Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren both at 7%. So, they thought...
Louisa, after the first two debates, they wouldn't even publish their poll results because it wasn't in conformity with their desires and preferences. Tulsi was the candidate most sought for by the American people.
Right.
Meanwhile, we have this ironic development. Trump defends Tulsi, takes on Hillary over Russian conspiracy theories. So now crooked Hillary is at it again, Trump tweeted. She is calling Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard a Russian favorite, Jill Stein a Russian asset. As you may have heard, I was called a big Russian lover also. Actually, I do like Russian people. I like all people. Hillary's gone crazy. No doubt about it. The New York Times has even stealth edited a story to hide her accusation that Hillary was grooming Tulsi Gabbard. They actually edited it. Instead, they said, she told David Plouffe, I'm not making any predictions. I think they have their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic Party and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's a favorite of the Russians, too, changed. Yeah, go to the next one. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It changed that the Republicans were grooming her as a third-party candidate. I mean, this is just outrageous. The New York Times is supposed to be our nation's newspaper of record, and it's turned into nothing but a propaganda sheet. I refer to it regularly as the Langley newsletter, Louisa.
Oh, Jim, that's a tough right hook there, but it's well deserved.
Continue. Next. Here I was interviewed by Press TV, the Iranian news service, and I explained how the baseless allegations made against Tulsi Gabbard by former Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton underscores her unstable character and narcissistic behavior. Next. Last week, she suggested Russia might promote Gabbard as a third-party candidate, who she has denied considering a third-party bid, and multiple Democratic presidential contenders defended her. This clarifies what many of us have discerned for some time, that Hillary Clinton is in fact clinically insane, said James Henry Fetzer, a retired professor of philosophy at the University of Minnesota. She's setting up the Democrats for a complete disaster in next year's presidential election. She is so narcissistic and infatuated with herself, she's even plotting to run again in 2020. Absolutely stunning, Louisa. Next slide. President Trump has now canceled all the Washington Post and New York Times subscriptions for the federal agency, saying the taxpayer is a bundle in preventing the spread of fake news. This was a brilliant move, Louisa. You can turn to the next slide. He's in a single stroke deprived them of one of their major sources of income. They're on the wane. This is going to hurt them at the bottom line. Earlier this week, President Trump told Fox News host Sean Hannity he might cancel the White House subscriptions to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Now he's done it for all federal agencies. Brilliant, Louisa, a brilliant stroke.
Yeah, next. Can't get Fido to go catch that paper anymore.
So he's now reporting what you were reporting, something big has happened. This has to do with al-Baghdadi. You can already flip to the next. It turns out, however, that Russia does not have reliable information on the U.S. operation in Syria to neutralize Baghdadi. And I've got to say, go to the next flip. The Washington Post mourned his passing. I mean, look, this is the Washington Post.
What?
Yeah. They're saying he was an austere religious scholar at the helm of the Islamic State who died at the age of 48 from the Washington Post. Another great reason to cancel the subscription from federal agencies, Louisa.
Oh, Jim, look, folks, it doesn't get any more fake than this, okay? You have Nancy Pelosi out there stating leave
the slide up while you talk.
Okay, yeah, you have Nancy Pelosi out there stating and complaining about how, killing him, but it's not going to stop ISIS. Well, first, give him credit for what he's done and how significant this actually is. They're all, it's all scripted, Jim. Sorry about that. It keeps.
Yeah, it's stunning. No, it's okay. You can move forward now. Thank you. Meanwhile, Bolton's revenge, a former national security advisor, is in contact with the impeachment panels. Attorneys for John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, are in discussion with House committees about the possibility of giving a deposition for their impeachment allegations. The man was a massive traitor, and he himself is so arrogant to think that if Trump fired him, then he must be an evil guy, and he's going to do everything he can to retaliate. Please go to the next. Trump. I informed John Bolton last night his services are no longer needed at the White House. I disagree strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked for his resignation given to me this morning. But Bolton has not taken it well, Louisa. Next.
No, not at all. Bolton, you mean the whistleblower?
Yep, that's right. He was a source for the first whistleblower and appears to have been the very second whistleblower himself. Interesting word choices. John Ratcliffe discussing the John Durham criminal investigation in the Upping IG report. This is very significant, Louisa, because it means it's gone into the level of criminality. Everyone is aware that Inspector General Horowitz is looking at Carter Page FISA application and potential misrepresentation to the FISA. That's the FISA court part. However, no one has even hinted that anyone in government might be looking at the FBI abuse of the NSA database and or the outlined surveillance violations by Judge Rosemary Collyer, which would fall under the FISA Act part. Interesting word choice when he's talking about criminal investigations, Louisa. Next.
Yeah.
So the Durham probe is now a criminal investigation. NSA examined all queries using identifiers for U.S. persons targeted pursuant to Section 704 and 705B of the FISA using this tool from before November 1st, 2015 to May 1st, 2016. There's more about it, Louisa, but this is very serious development. And a lot of high officials in the FBI and the DOJ are very, very concerned. Next.
Yeah, they're running to Jordan to seek asylum.
Meanwhile, Google and others invested $256 million into CrowdStrike so the Democrats could use FBI wiretap data to regain Congress. This is stunning. CrowdStrike Incorporated, whose digital security services helped the Democratic National Committee respond to a network breach that was linked to Russia, falsely linked to Russia, of course, because we know Seth Rich was the source, raised $100 million in its latest fund round. The new money, led by investor Accel, assesses the company at more than $1 billion, CrowdStrike said in a statement Wednesday. With the latest investment, the Irvine, California-based company said it's raised a total of $256 million. Next. Google and others invested $256 into CrowdStrike, an IT company and FBI contractor. Since CrowdStrike has top secret clearance, so does Google. So do other investors. They all have unlimited access to the FBI's data, files, and surveillance information. It's illegal to grant non-FBI employees access to top secret information, according to a court ruling by Judge Rosemary Collier, head of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISA. Next. The data is being used by the Democratic National Committee to regain control of Congress in November. It was also used in the Hillary Clinton campaign for president. CrowdStrike has the only access to the DNC's computer system, and the computer specifically that was allegedly hacked appears to be located in Ukraine, which was why Donald Trump, during his conversation with the president of Ukraine, mentioned CrowdStrike. Google donated one of their planes for use by the Hillary campaign for president. A venture capital company, Warburg Pincus, however, controls CrowdStrike, where Warburg invested more money into CrowdStrike than Google. Next. Yeah. Your thoughts, Louisa, you can back if you want.
Yeah, I'm going to go back so I can take a look at this. Exactly. Now, right, this is criminal, and so this is what's happened as a result of Pompeo going to Italy and getting more evidence, collecting more evidence directly in Italy. And so this is going to really be expanded. The IG report, you know, as everybody does know, is going to be, they're going over the redactions of it. I guess they're arguing over the redactions of it, quite honestly, and trying to figure out what they're going to make published and what, you know, what's going to be available and what isn't. So it's heating up. It's heating up. It's a criminal investigation, as you said, Jim. So we'll see what happens, where this develops.
Well, as you know, the Israelis, the Mossad, has infiltrated our mainstream news media beginning in the 1950s. The CIA began the op so that by 1975, William Colby, then its director, testified to Congress that the agency had owned everyone of any significance in the media. At that time, it's become much worse. I now have panels showing 100 executives from CNN, every one of whom is a dual, no, stay there.
Sorry about that.
Every one of whom is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. Another panel from NBC, 100 executives, every one of whom is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. Another panel from the New York Times, a Langley newsletter, Louisa, 100 executives, every one of which is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. So, and a former Israeli intel officer reports that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell worked for Israel ought to come as no surprise. Next.
Indeed.
Since the apparent death by suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, which I strongly suspect was faked, much has come to light about his depraved activities and methods used to sexually abuse underage girls and entrap the rich and powerful for the purpose of blackmail. His ties to intelligence, described in depth in a recent press investigative series, have continued to receive minimal mainstream media coverage. which has essentially moved on from the Epstein scandal, despite the fact that many co-conspirators remain on the loose, no doubt because, as I'm reporting, all their executives are dual U.S.-Israeli citizens. For those who've examined Epstein's ties to intelligence, there are clear links to both U.S. intel and Israeli intelligence, leaving it open to debate as to which country's intel apparatus was closer to Epstein and most involved in his blackmail, sex trafficking activities. I have no doubt, however, that it was Israel, the Mossad. A recent interview given by a former high-ranking official in Israeli military intel has claimed Epstein's sexual blackmail enterprise was an Israeli intelligence operation run for the purpose of entrapping powerful individuals and politicians in the United States and abroad. Surprise, surprise.
That's right.
An interview last week with the independent outlet Narrative, Ben Menash, who himself was involved in Iran-Contra arms deals, told his interviewer, Zev Shalem, that he had been introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by Robert Maxwell in the mid-1980s. While Maxwell and Ben Menash's involvement with Iran-Contra was ongoing, Ben Menash told Shalley that he, Maxwell, wanted us to accept him, Epstein, as part of our group. I'm not denying that we were at the time a group that was Nick Davies, foreign editor of the Maxwell-owned Daily Mirror. It was Maxwell, it was myself and our team from Israel. We were doing what we were doing. Past reporting by Seymour Hersh and others have revealed that Maxwell, Davies, and Ben Merash were involved in the transfer and sale of military equipment and weapons from Israel to Iran on behalf of Israeli intelligence during this time period. He then added, Maxwell had stated during the introduction that your Israeli bosses have already approved of Epstein. Shalem later noted that Maxwell had an extensive network in Israel at the time, which included the late Prime Minister Aaron Sharon, according to Ben Menash. Very serious stuff, Louisa. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson spoke with an ex-NBC producer about how the Mossad had allegedly tapped his phones to cover for Harvey Weinstein. Look at how broad and encompassing this is. Fox News host Tucker Carlson spoke with an ex-NBC producer, Richard McHugh, on how NBC News chairman Andy Lack and NBC News president Noah Oppenheim allegedly shut down Roland Farrow's story exposing Harvey Weinstein. Next. He followed it up with his interview with McHugh. Fascinating interview with Roland Farrow's producer, Rich McHugh. Tucker Carlson, someone broke into your house and tampered with the phone lines, and the suggestion is it was private investigators, former Mossad, hired by Harvey Weinstein. Did you ever get to the bottom of it? Turns out, as Rowan reports in Catch and Kill, his new book, that from the time we interviewed Rose McGowan, we were targeted by two different intelligence firms, including Black Cube, comprised largely of former Mossad members. Regular emails about us went to Harvey's inbox, letting him know how precisely which sources were working with Roland Farrell and Rich McHugh on the HW report. Most terrifying of all, my home in suburban New Jersey was broken into and the phone wires were tampered with. I began communicating through encrypted apps and border phones and told my wife and 4 daughters not to answer the door for any strangers. This is now Tucker Carlson. What I faced from my bosses at NBC, though, felt worse than being spied on by Weinstein's paid thugs as a reporter. You'd expect the powerful people you're investigating to play rough. It's harder to experience the stress and anxiety of being attacked from the inside by people who are supposed to have your back. No doubt it's just a coincidence Mossad is connected to both Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. Well, now you know what President Trump goes through. People, trying to, they're supposed to have your back are actually attacking you. So this is what the president goes through every day.
I've watched those interviews. Tucker's really wonderful. It's the one show I never want to miss. Meanwhile, this is coming from State of the Nation. New World Order globalist cabal throws more fuel on the California wildfires. This is extremely distressing. Geoengineered California firestorms triggered by deliberate acts of pyroterrorism. As expected and predicted, the California fall wildfire season was exploded with geoengineering precision and pinpoint arson attacks. For those uninitiated in the convoluted workings of the complex criminal conspiracy behind these intentional acts of pyroterrorism, the following expose provides a necessary background in history. Every resident of California ought to be deeply familiar with the well-established dynamic expressed by the preceding post title. Likewise, every person traveling through the now charted Golden State should know exactly where they're going and staying vis-a-vis the targeted areas that are being burned down for the purpose of the state-sponsored criminal conspiracy. Your life may depend on it. Yes, the once great state of California, where I was born, has always experienced its share of destructive wildfires in the form of forest fires, brush fires, and grass fires. However, the last decade has seen a dramatic uptick in both the number and intensity of these devastating conflagrations. It's of paramount importance to comprehend that this new trend has been fabricated with high purposeful design, and that the real perps, state-sponsored geoengineers and foreign-controlled globalists, are responsible for both covertly creating the conducive conditions for these wildfires, as well as stealthily starting and spreading them via various arson techniques and ideology. Let's face it, when headlines like this now appear regularly during California's 2 wildfire seasons each and every year, something is very wrong indeed. And they provide proof. What follows is a video of just one wildfire site in Northern California that was just arson attacked by a fire-triggered dude. That's a directed energy weapon. Below the video is a screenshot which shows the size of the conflagration relative to the California coastline. For a better frame of reference, the following map of Northern California indicates this area of particular conflagration in Mendocino County, which is west of Sacramento and just east of the coast where it juts out into the Pacific. They appear to be driving people off of the land in order to appropriate the land by rich investors, Louisa. It's very, very serious. Very, very serious and profoundly troubling. And the state of the nation is doing a great job of pursuing this. Next. Here you can see a close-up of the same explosive fire at the very beginning. Look how it's virtually an explosion. For the proper context of this screenshot frame, watch the entire video before it's taken down. Kincaid, California offers the kind of low-density population, locale, and type of terrain for wildland fires that the New World Order globalists are dead set on burning out and burning down respectively. Here, why? Deracination. In this deliberate way, the real perps are terrorizing the residents with annual firestorms in order to forcefully move them off their ancestral lands, especially throughout the conservative red counties in California. However, there are also many blue county residents getting burned out as well during the last few years. It's got a politically driven agenda.
Yes.
This outgoing series of clandestine black operations is all about purposeful and well-planned deracination. Definition: to remove or separate from a native environment or culture, especially to remove the racial or ethnic characteristics or influence from. Not only are the governmental and corporate co-conspirators committing a targeted genocide with these false flag attacks because they're incorrectly blamed on Mother Nature and PG&E, they are stealing the coveted lands whenever, wherever, and however they can. A New World Order globalist, well known that nothing works so effectively than to scare residents off their property via a surreptitious, implemented plan of deracination. California is using the fire get-on meme to fearmonger and terrorize red county residents off their land. First, they predict the fires, then turn off the power, then start the fires. Next, they spread the fires. Yes, there's much more to this power shutdown, but that's the gist of it by an intel analyst and former U.S. military officer. Why else are they burning out so many folks up and down the state? Louisa, it's absolutely stunning stuff.
Well, Jim, you recall that when you showed that, let me go back to this. Yeah, we talked about this on a previous POTUS report, Jim, that there was a whole section being cleared out to put in this new rail system. Do you recall?
That's right, the high-speed rail, yes.
It's been reported, and I have not independently verified this, but it's been reported that these fires are happening along a proposed path for this system.
Yes.
of
Yeah.
this rail station that they want to connect Russia to the United States, and this is part of the rail system to do that. I just think, look, folks, this is tiptoe to totalitarianism also. So they're going, I mean, the fact that they're burning people out of their homes, Jim, this is, they know people are not going to give up their land willingly. So this is a big problem. And people in California, you know, you're going to have to stand up and do something about it, because
Well,
I don't really know what their choice is.
the ongoing assault on freedom of speech and freedom of the press through the internet continues unabated. Ready to pay $30,000 for sharing a photo online, the House of Representatives thinks you are, and notice who controls the House of Representatives. It's not the Republicans. Tomorrow, the House is scheduled to vote on what appears to be an unconstitutional copyright bill that carries with it life-altering penalties. The bill would slap $30,000 fines on internet users who share a copyrighted work they don't own online. The CASE Act creates a new tribunal separate from the federal judiciary, part of the constitutional problem, and places it within the Copyright Office. The agency has a sad history of industry capture and often takes its cues from major content companies as opposed to average Americans. The new tribunals will receive complaints from rights holders, anyone who's taken a photo, video, or written something, and will issue a notice to the party being sued. We don't actually know what the notice will look like. It could be an email, a text message, a phone call with a voicemail, a letter in the mail. Once the letter goes out, the targeted user has to respond within a tight deadline. Failing to respond in time means you'll automatically lose or are on the hook for $30,000. That's why EFF is concerned that this law will be abused by copyright trolls. The trolls will cast a wide net in hope of catching internet users unaware. Corporations with lawyers will be able to avoid all of this because they'll have paid employees in charge of opting out of the CASE Act. But regular Americans with kids, jobs, and other real-life obligation could easily miss those notices and lose out at great expense. Meanwhile, AOC has exposed about Mark Zuckerberg, from Rolling Stone. Facebook isn't even only tolerating this information and political advertisements, it's facilitating it. Now, this actually is very interesting, Louisa, because Zuckerberg is saying he's not going to censor political advertising. And in this instance, I think Mark Zuckerberg is on the right side, and AOC, who of course is an extreme left-wing zealot, is on the wrong. The Facebook CEO was confronted by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who'd already proven to be one of the sharpest, most effective inquisitors. This is coming from reader supported. This is from a left-wing site, so they're promoting her left-wing agenda. I just find it fascinating that Zuckerberg, in this instance, is actually standing up for freedom of speech. Next.
I'm going to show you an example of how they're not standing up, because words mean nothing. It's their actions, and that's what we're going to know. We're going to know them by their actions. I'll show you.
Yeah. Okay. Take, for example, how he responded when AOC tried to determine to what extent Facebook fact checks political advertisement. Now, this whole fact check business is just another layer of censorship, Louisa. Most people they're using as fact checkers are political agents. They aren't scholars. They don't know what they're talking about. For example, I'm a professional scholar. I could be used as a fact checker on JFK, 9/11, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, Wellstone, and a host of other issues. But the people they employ are just stooges. They're trolls. They have no scholarly or academic qualifications. They're not skilled in research. It's all completely a game, a subterfuge. AOC. Could I run ads on Facebook targeting Republicans in primaries saying they voted for the Green New Deal? If you're not fact-checking political advertisements, I'm just trying to understand the bounds of what is fair game. Zuckerberg. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. It's AOC. So you don't know if I'll be able to do that, Zuckerberg? I think probably. AOC, do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisement? Zuckerberg, I think line is bad. I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie would be bad. That's different from our being in our position the right thing to do to prevent, say, your contestants or people in an election from seeing that you had lied. AOC, so you won't take down lies or you will take down lies? It's a pretty simple yes or no. Where, of course, identifying the lies is the problem. You can make a false statement and it not be a lie unless you asserted the false statement already knowing it was true and asserted it anyway. Zuckerberg. In most cases in a democracy, I believe people should be able to see for themselves what politicians they may or may not vote for are saying and judge their character for themselves. AOC. So you won't take them down. You may flag that it's wrong, but you won't take it down. Zuckerberg. It depends on the context that it shows up. Organic posts, ads. Not very reassuring. Now, this is coming from the left. In fact, it's terrifying and all but guarantees the platform will be co-opted by bad actors looking to spread disinformation. But look, after 2.5 years of the Russia hoax, it's the Democrats who are spreading the disinformation, not the Republicans, Louisa. Exactly. There may be another slide in this set. Meanwhile, Americans overwhelmingly reject the anti-BDS laws, a poll finds. This is very heartening. Almost 80% of Democrats who know about the movement to boycott Israel say it's legitimate, according to a new poll. Americans overwhelmingly reject laws designed to penalize supporters of BDS. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement for Palestinian rights, according to a new poll. More than 70% of respondents oppose laws that target BDS activists as an infringement on the constitutional right to free speech. That opposition has risen to 80% among Democrats and is still remarkably high among Republicans at 62%. With the encouragement of Israel and its lobby group, 27 U.S. states have adopted anti-BDS laws, contrary to the freedom of speech and freedom of the press that were guaranteed by the First Amendment. Similar measures pending in Congress face strong opposition from civil liberties groups. The University of Maryland Critical Issues poll asked a representative sample of more than 3,000 Americans about their attitude toward Middle East issues. Among respondents, about half had heard something about BDS. Of those, 26% support BDS. Another 26% neither support nor oppose it. Meanwhile, 47% say they oppose BDS. Following recent trends, there is strong party polarization. Just 8% of Republicans support BDS, compared to 48% of Democrats. In this case, Louisa, the Democrats are in the right and the Republicans are in the wrong. BDS is completely worthy of support. There may be one more slide.
Okay. No, that's it on that topic. I don't have any comments, Jim.
Okay. Meanwhile, stunning. YouTube has removed 17,000 video channels, 100,000 videos, 500 million comments for hate speech. That just means people who are speaking the truth as they see it, which YouTube hates. This is completely outrageous. YouTube says it's removed more than 17,000 channels for hate speech, representing a spike in takedown since its new hate speech policy went into effect in June. This is eviscerating the First Amendment. The Google-owned company calls it June Update, in which YouTube said it would specifically prohibit videos that glorify Nazi ideology or deny documented violent events like the so-called Holocaust, or deny what they call real-world events like Sandy Hook. In other words, if you're at contrary with the official narrative, then you're exemplifying hate speech, a fundamental shift in our policies that resulted in a takedown of more than 100,000 individual videos during the second quarter. The number of comments removed doubled to over 500 million because of the new hate speech policy. YouTube said the 30,000 videos it removed the last month represent 3% of the views that many videos generated during the same period. We've been removing harmful content since YouTube started, but our investment in this work is accelerated, completely outrageous, violating our rights under the First Amendment, Louisa, under the guise of being a private company. Next, folks. YouTube, which has 2 billion monthly logged-in users, has come under fire for its struggle to keep up with the constant influx of new content that promotes violence, hate speech, or misinformation. which is just information that's false, which YouTube isn't in a position to judge. The company has taken steps to censor its platform and remove such content, relying on its machine learning technology to help detect videos in need of human review. In the blog post, YouTube said an update to its spam detection system during the second quarter led to a 50% increase in the number of channels that were terminated for violating its spam policies. This is just outrageous. Together with Google, YouTube also has a team of over 10,000 who focus on detecting, reviewing, and removing videos violating its policy. YouTube says the videos removed represent a 5-time increase compared with the previous 3 months. Still, in early August, the Anti-Defamation League, which is behind much of the censorship, this is like the intellectual arm of the Mossad, Center on Extremism, reported finding a significant number of channels that continue to spread anti-Semitic and white supremacist content. That's anyone who talks about America first. That's anyone who's critical of Israel. Meanwhile, alt-censored is capturing, saving censored YouTube videos and channels. This is very, very good. They begin with a quote from Orwell. If you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Unbelievable. They're right.
I know, Jim. I know. Well, they never restored our channel. GoldFish Report original channel was deleted a year and a half ago by YouTube, and it was never restored. So our first 200 reports have been removed from the internet, unless someone had downloaded them and copied them and whatever. But our original channel's gone, Jim.
It's just outrageous, Louisa.
Yep.
A hack Orwellian platform, YouTube, took down more than 100,000 individual videos during the second quarter of the year. It has a running rate of 30,000 a month since. The number of comments removed has doubled over 500 million because of its dubious new hate speech policy. YouTube channels serving conspiracy inquiry or unapproved political messages are labeled hate speech and shut down by the thousands. Yet the promotion of murder, drugs, criminal activity, and gang life to young people is perfectly acceptable to the hypocrites at Google Alphabet. We discuss this in our post, Hypocrisy 101, and Rapster felon Bobby Shmurda. On October 17th, a large, politically moderate and quite reasonable Red Ice TV channel was deleted. I've been interviewed on Red Ice a couple of times. Wonderful website. Red Ice's crime was focusing on real issues and real news. Can't have that. Red Ice was popular, garnering more than 45 million views, more than 326,000 subscribers, and nearly 20,000 videos. Fortunately, Red Ice has preserved their work and is still on alternative channels, demonstrating the Streisand effect. Their subscribers have picked up noticeably since the ban. Well done, Red Ice. One of the games YouTube plays is to ignore fair use copyright law. Censors acknowledge it selectively hunts for videos that don't counter Orwellian narratives. The idea, it seems, is to identify and target certain channels for the penalty box with initial strikes designed to encourage self-censorship. Hitting channels with a strike for covering newsworthy clips is unethical and in bad faith. Here we simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undocumented, undetected, and unchecked. And the content martyr says, another white nationalist, we need to shut down this account. And then his counterpart says, that was Barack Obama, moron, because Barack Obama took that stance before Donald Trump became president. Fascinating. Next. This week, we stumbled across a new website called altcensor.com that has rescued and restored a catalog of 29,000 censored videos so far, including content deleted from YouTube. The catalog is increasing at a nice clip. Alt-Censor's site presentation is clean and usable. We were pleased to discover some old YouTube channels we haven't seen in a couple of years. We're going to use one of them called This is Europa in our video spotlight box to give these channels some traction. When you watch This is Europa, a benign but wonderful video, you'll realize just how extreme even limited state censorship has become. Winter Watch has dozens of lost YouTube videos embedded in articles, and we're going to submit these and try to restore them.
Wonderful. I hope they put GoldFish Report on that list.
Wouldn't that be terrific, Louisa?
Yeah, and you know what I'm going to do? I just have to, because we're on the subject of the censorship, Jim, I'm just going to stop for a second because there's something that I wanted to
Sure.
share with the viewers that I found today, just today. I can't wait for you to hear what you have to say about this, Jim. On our GoldFish Report Facebook news page, which was a very, very busy news page, this is a pinned post that I've had up here since obviously June of 2018. And I found this this morning when I logged in, and there's a screen covering a quote by John F. Kennedy saying that this is false information, that it was checked by independent fact checkers.
How absurd, Louisa. A JFK quote is false information and they're going to censor it?
Well, you're looking right at that. That's what it says. It covers the picture. It says see why. So let's do this while we're recording just to take a look at why this is. And let's see what the image is that comes up. No, JFK didn't say he would expose a slavery plot. So this has got to be AI, Jim, who doesn't understand doesn't understand the many uses of different words. You know, like linguistically, this is a very foul system.
Yeah.
It's a very right. Yeah. So I will go back to that at another time. But I just wanted to share that.
Nice catch, Louisa.
It's just another form of massive. Censorship. Exactly. So let me just go back and screen share it where we left off here. Okay. All right. Share. Here we go. Thanks for that.
Well, now we turn to foreign affairs. You might want to go full screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going. It just takes me a second to get there. Right. A second.
This is very interesting. U.S. troops from Syria cannot stay in Iraq and are going to have to come home. That's a good thing. A few days after saying U.S. troops out of Syria into neighboring Iraq, the Pentagon announced the troops would remain in Western Iraq. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has now confirmed that won't actually be happening. The plan to shift them to Western Iraq until the point that the Iraqi government heard about it, which issued a subsequent statement saying the U.S. never asked if the troops could stay, and that, by the way, they cannot. The troops can come to Iraq for transit out of the region, so they'll be coming home after all. Good move by Iraq. Next.
Oh, okay. You didn't finish this slide, but okay.
Did Trump outsmart Putin with a Syria retreat? It looked as though Trump had done quite a brilliant thing, where Russia would soon find himself caught between Turkey and Syria. After U.S. President Donald Trump announced a withdrawal from Syria, the House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed a resolution denouncing it as a benefit to adversaries of the U.S. government, including Syria, Iran, and Russia. Next. 6 days later, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate, introduced a similar resolution. If not arrested, he said, withdrawing from Syria will invite chaos.
Sorry, my finger.
More of the chaos that breeds terrorism and create a vacuum our adversaries will certainly fill. Such bipartisan agreement is rare in Washington, but underestimates the wisdom of Trump's decision, the benefits for U.S. interests in the Middle East, and the nasty trick he played on Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump calls Syria a bloody sandbox. He's right about that. It's also a briar patch of warring tribes and sects, inexplicable ancient animosities, and irreconcilable differences. The president is not prepared to take responsibility for this complicated place or to get caught up in it if leaving creates an opportunity for Russia to fill the vacuum. As American lawmakers believe, then it's one Trump is happy to cede. The Russian leader struts on the world stage, but he's not exactly won a victory. Sooner or later, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, or the next iteration of jihad will break loose in Syria. And when that happens, the Russians will be the new Satan on the block. I think this is a correct analysis, and I'm very, very disappointed that Trump has sent tanks back into Syria, as I'm going to be reporting here. The next slide, please.
Okay.
The safety zone that Putin and Turkish President Erdogan have recently carved from northern Syria will collapse. Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad rightly considers it a violation of his country's sovereignty. And if he can persuade his Russian patrons to shut down the zone, Erdogan will threaten another invasion. If Putin then sides with Turkey, Assad will take matters into his own hands. His army may not be fit for fighting armed opponents, but the Kurds are and can act as Assad's proxy. In other words, the Kurds and the Syrians are going to join together. If and when such a border fight develops, Putin will find himself between Assad and Erdogan. Whatever he does, he'll wind up in the most vulnerable of Middle Eastern positions, the friend of somebody's enemy. Next. Russia reports more Syrian Kurds withdraw from the safe zone. Russia is reporting that more Kurd SDF fighters have successfully withdrawn out of the Syrian safe zone, the 32-kilometer, 20-mile area along the Turkish border. They say the SDF, as the Syrian Defense Forces, reported the pullout. Russia can confirm, but they didn't say how many. Now, as I'm reporting, they're joining with the Syrians here in a mutual alliance. Next. Russia has written off African debt worth $20 billion. I think this was a brilliant move on behalf of Russia. Moscow has written off more than $20 billion in debt accumulated by African countries during the Soviet era. President Putin has announced it was not only an act of generosity, but also a manifestation of pragmatism, because many of the African states were not able to pay interest on these loans. Putin told TASS on the eve of the summit. Now, this is just the opposite of how the U.S. acts through the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. They get these countries hooked on big projects they can't afford and then force them to turn over their natural resources to international U.S.-allied companies for exploitation. So this is a wonderful act by Vladimir Putin. Next.
Right. Well, China's doing that also in Africa as well. So
it's a very good move, Louisa. Continue. Yeah. Meanwhile, the U.S. is sending tanks back into Syria to focus on the oil fields. Now, this was a colossal blunder, in my opinion. Pentagon officials are revising their Syrian war plan around a new set of priorities, which Trump has defined simply as controlling Syria's oil. This came after he declared the Syrian war over and subsequently backed off, withdrawing all U.S. forces from Syria. For a while, it was going to be a couple of hundred U.S. ground troops. Now the Pentagon is going more all in, sending tanks and armored vehicles into Syria. This creates exactly the wrong impression on the world, Louisa, that U.S. is in Syria for its oil. Even the pretense of standing up for democracy and freedom, of course, was a sham. But this makes it obvious that nothing we have said in the past about our involvement in Syria had any credibility whatsoever. Next. While styling this as Trump reluctantly staying at war fits Lindsey Graham's narrative, Trump has been talking since before his election about paying for wars in the Middle East by taking their oil, and has threatened to brag about how he's controlling Syria's oil. So it may not have been that difficult to convince him. But the earlier article about the genius of the U.S. withdrawal was completely right. This is a mistake and a reversal. Next. Trump's oil gambit is a crime, and what may be worse, a mistake, my opinion. This is from Russia Today, RT. U.S. President Trump's baffling comments about keeping some troops in Syria to secure the oil suggests a confused, contradictory, and ultimately self-defeating policy. That's right. That's spot on. Earlier this month, he appeared to have used the impending Turkish invasion to deftly cut the Gordian knot of U.S. presence in Syria, citing it as a pretext for pulling out troops that weren't supposed to be there to begin with and had long since completed their mission in any case. He stood by that decision even as the Washington establishment shrieked about betrayal of allied Kurdish militias, and was vindicated when a deal worked out by Moscow and Ankara created a solution that benefited everyone, except those in the U.S. still committed to regime change in Damascus, that is. Next. While Trump has not officially renounced the Assad must go policy, the pullout was supposed to be the end of it in practice. The sudden talk about Syrian oil fields, however, suggests someone from the swamp managed to persuade the president to keep one foot in the endless foreign wars he pledged to end. We want to keep the oil, Trump said this week, to the confusion of everybody. Attempting to explain Thursday, he said the oil fields were held by Islamic State until the U.S. took them over with the help of the Kurds. We will never let a reconstituted ISIS have those fields, except There's no sign of ISIS getting reconstituted or rising from the ashes, and the Syrians rightly regard any U.S. attempt to seize the oil fields as theft and piracy. Next. The oil fields in question were traditionally used to meet domestic demands and are too small to be interesting to Washington in terms of profit. Journalist and Orientalist Andrei Ontop told RT, one clue might be the words of U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who said the purpose of keeping the troops in Syria was to deny access to ISIS and any other group who may want to seek that revenue to enable their own malign activity. This phrasing is a dead giveaway that the oil gambit is not about ISIS, but about blocking the government in Damascus from using its own natural resources to rebuild. Already under a blockade by the U.S. and its EU allies, Syria desperately needs the oil to help its people survive the winter. Malign activities is a phrase Washington often uses in reference to Iran, a strategic partner and ally of the Syrian government. Next. If that sounds like a policy designed by someone from the Washington establishment who has dreamed of regime change in Damascus for the past 8 years and greeted Trump's decision with wailing and gnashing of teeth, you are not alone. NBC even named a possible culprit. Retired General Jack Keane, a Fox News military analyst who they say gave Trump a briefing about the oil fields. Yet Keane has been against any U.S. withdrawal from Syria, the Middle East in general, and Trump has ignored his advice in the past in favor of other Fox personalities, such as Tucker Carlson and his frequent guest, retired U.S. Army Colonel Douglas McGregor, who both approved of the Syrian pullout. Next. So that Trump did the right thing, and then he reversed himself, which is a sad to see, Louise.
Well, let me just comment on that for just a minute, Jim, if you don't mind, because it seems like the Syrians couldn't. This is the issue. The Syrians couldn't secure that oil field themselves. If ISIS had control of it and they were using the money, let's just say laundering, whatever, using money to fund their violence, then it means that the president has always been about everybody paying their fair share and stepping up to the plate, so that the United States isn't footing the bill for everybody's security. Okay, so maybe the president, give him the benefit of the doubt here. The president is talking about the oil because he went in there and secured it. He took it away from the criminals, the terrorists. So why shouldn't we have some benefit? Why shouldn't we, having the strongest military, take control of that, but not only for our use? So if it's for the purpose of sharing this, and I think people need to be careful not to jump to conclusions about this, because it was in control of ISIS. So Syrians had nothing anyway. If ISIS was controlling it, the Syrians didn't have anything. I can't imagine the president not letting the Syrian people benefit from this. But if we are going to control it, we should have, if we are going to protect it and keep the terrorists from acquiring it again and controlling it again, why shouldn't we get some benefit from it? And that's the art of the deal. So that's the way I see this. I could be wrong, but that's just how I see this. But go ahead.
Well, here's an update on my Sandy Hook trial and the absurd award of $450,000 for an alleged defamation. This is an article by Kurt Nemo. It's actually very, very good. It's on my blog, Sandy Hook and the Murder of the First Amendment. He says he doesn't know what actually happened at Sandy Hook, but the government and the media have been caught hundreds of times lying about or twisting news stories. So he believes skepticism is entirely warranted. He's now convinced that the First Amendment is a dead letter. He's felt that way for some time. Recent events put a capstone on his previous arguments that much of the Bill of Rights was dead. This was recently underscored by the persecution of activist and author Jim Fetzer for writing a book, actually editing, that claims the mass shooting at Sandy Hook did not take place. It was, in fact, a FEMA drill to promote gun control. A Wisconsin jury has ruled that James Fetzer, a retired professor from the University of Minnesota Duluth, must pay Leonard Posner $450,000 for accusing him of forging his son Noah's death certificate. Fetzer is the co-author of Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, which alleges that Posner faked his son's birth certificate, and the Obama administration staged the shooting in an effort to pass legislation on gun control. Of course, typically has several facts wrong here. I've never accused Leonard Posner of forging his son's death certificate. I've only observed the death certificate is a fabrication. I'm not the co-author of the book. I am the co-editor of the book, which has 13 contributors, including 6 current or retired PhD professors, where our collaborative research established the school had been closed by 2008, that there were no students there, and that it was a FEMA exercise to promote gun control, where we even found the FEMA manual and included it as Appendix A in the book. The ruling award granted to the plaintiff will undoubtedly drive Fetzer to financial ruin if it's not overturned on appeal, and he, Kurt Neumo, predicts it will stand. This court case is a pivotal moment for those who work to eradicate free speech, a right granted to those who make controversial statements or write books some people find objectionable. Basically, the lawsuit was because I hurt his feelings. I wrote a comment on it. Thanks for this, Kurt. You're certainly accurate about the alleged offenses widely reported by the mainstream media. However, Mike Palachuk and I did not author the book. We edited it. There are 13 contributors, including 6 current or retired PhD professors. We established that the school had been closed by 2008, that there were no students there, and that it was a FEMA drill presented as mass murder to promote gun control. We even found the manual for the exercise and included it as Appendix A. Moreover, I only observed, while offering a dozen reasons for thinking so, that the death certificate for Noah Posner that the plaintiff had provided to my colleague Kelly Watt was a fabrication, not that he had been the one to fake it. The laws of defamation require defaming a person, not merely characterize a document. 2 expert document examiners not only confirmed my conclusion, but determined that 3 other death certificates for Noah that had surfaced during discovery were also fakes. Summary judgment required there be no disputed facts, where the authenticity of the death certificate remained in dispute. Nevertheless, the court simply set the 2 expert reports to the side as just opinions and ruled in favor of the plaintiff. Kevin Barrett, who was present most of the second day of the trial, has published a rather revealing account, which you can find at the UNS.com website with commentaries, now over 550 really very good commentaries. This was a classic SWAP strategic lawsuit against public participation to punish those who are exposing scams conducted by government authorities to instill fear into the American people, to make us more amenable to political manipulation. So Kurt has it right. You can download the first edition of the book for free by putting its title, Nobody's Died at Sandy Hook PDF, in your browser and assess the evidence for yourself, which the court, alas, would not allow me to present in my defense. I now have a new blog just up, the Sandy Hook Posner versus Fetzer lawsuit, the basic documents. The great public interest in this case leads me to make some of the most important documents, from the complaint to the oral hearing to the order of the court, affirming the plaintiff's summary judgment motion and denying mine, even though I had explained that by Connecticut law, not even parents are allowed to possess uncertified death certificates, as was the case with the copy the plaintiff made available to Kelly Watt in 2014 and published in Chapter 11 of Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, 2015, second edition, 2016. Here I give you the 2 death certificates, the one on the left that was published in the book and the one on the right that was attached to the complaint. According to the complaint, and you have access to it there are no material differences between the copy of the death certificate published in the book above left and the copy of the death certificate attached to the complaint above right. Notice, however, that the death certificate attached to the complaint has a handwritten file number, top right, town certification on left-hand side, and state certification bottom portion, while the copy published in the book has none of those, which most would agree have to qualify as material differences.
Well, Jim, what about the bottom right corner? I'm sorry, that's redacted, and then on the other one, it's not redacted.
I know, I'm telling you, that's what he put up, Louisa.
Yeah.
Just check it out. There's so much going on here. Next. Moreover, during the course of discovery, Dave Gahary obtained a 3rd death certificate from the town above left, and I secured a 4th from the state above right. We secured reports from 2 forensic document examiners, Larry Wickstrom from Minnesota and AP Ash Robertson from California, both of whom concluded that all 4 of these death certificates were fabrication. Wickstrom's affidavit, exam report, and expert CV, and Robertson's affidavit and CV were all in evidence prior to the oral hearing, and I make them available to the public here. The only issue that remained for a jury to decide was the amount of damages I owed to the plaintiff for defaming him. One witness, apart from Mr. Posner, by the name of Dr. Lubbock, testified that Mr. Posner would have recovered from the TDSD induced by the murder of son had it not been for the sentences in a book describing the death certificate as a fabrication. That, he said, induced permanent PTSD, his son's death only transient. But he acknowledged that he had no face-to-face contact with the plaintiff. And get this, Louisa, as I explain here, he is basing his diagnosis on hearsay. He never even met the plaintiff face-to-face. Here's how we know. The person he was diagnosing had claimed he fabricated a death certificate for his son, but Dr. Fetzer only claimed the death certificate was a fabrication, not that he had forged it. The person he was diagnosing was harassed by Dr. Fetzer, but Dr. Fetzer has never harassed Leonard Posner. The person he was diagnosing had phone calls with Leonard Posner, but Dr. Fetzer has never had a phone call with Leonard Posner. The person he was diagnosing began taking a turn for the worse in 2014, but Dr. Fetzer's book was not published until 2015. He claimed to have read the chapter co-authored with Kelly Watt, but anyone who had actually read the chapter would have known those claims were false. Finally.
Oh, sorry.
You can go to my legal defense fund now at jamesfetzer.com and join the fight for freedom of speech. None of the money raised will be used to offset the absurd $450,000 verdict, but only to support the appeal that will set that award aside in the trial that I have been denied to correct the record, expose Sandy Hook, and, to the extent possible under these circumstances, restore respect for the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. That's at jamesfetzer.com. You can find the article on my blog at jamesfetzer.org. And if you prefer to write a check, there's my home address. You can write it to the James Fetzer Legal Defense Fund at 800 Violet Lane, Oregon, Wisconsin, 53575. And I'm very grateful for those who have already contributed in an amount approaching $2,000 so far.
Oh, that's wonderful, Jim. That's wonderful. And the GoldFish Report, myself personally, has a First Amendment federal suit as well. And this is exactly mine's going on 8 years. Okay. So the minute you say something publicly, they will target you and they will fabricate a case against you. They will take elements that are facts and then they will completely distort them. And this is what they do. And
that's 100% what happened in my case, Louisa.
But it's their MO, Jim, and this is exactly what they do. And if Jim's First Amendment and my First Amendment are killed, folks, you don't have one either. So you can go to thegoldfishreport.com and you can also support and help support our First Amendment fight as well, because it's going to shut everybody down. This is like a tiptoe to totalitarianism, Jim. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to really feel like they need to take some responsibility for them, and participate somehow, and see that they don't have a First Amendment right, no matter what they think. And I'll tell you why. It's because we're under a USA corporation. This is not the original Constitution of the Republic. And this is what Trump is supposed to be restoring. So, all right, Jim. Folks, we'll be back with more. Jim, thank you so much for your reporting. Excellent work, Jim.
Thanks, Louise, and thanks for your support.
Folks, we hope you have a great week. We will be doing a special for our 400th. We're planning on it. Let's hope it works out for our 400th GoldFish Report. And that will be on space policy. And we will see all of you next week for another POTUS report. So we hope you have a great week, everybody. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. Follow us on Facebook and by all means on Twitter as well. We do appreciate your support. And we thank everybody for the support that they have given, and to our Patreons as well. Become a Patreon, and you can go to goldfishreport.com and all those links are there. So thank you, everyone. This concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.